friends, today we will study about consumer behavior. In this topic, we will study about the class, status and categories of social class. Next, we will study about the affluent consumers. Further, we will study about the middle class and understand about the working class and non-affluent consumers. Now, let us begin with introduction. Social class or simply class, as in class society, is a set of concepts in the social sciences and political theory centered on models of social stratification, in which people are grouped into a set of hierarchical social categories, the most common being the upper, middle and lower classes. It is an essential object of analysis for sociologists, political scientists, anthropologists and social historians. However, there is not a consensus on the best definitions of the class, and the term has different contextual meanings. In common parlance, the term social class is usually synonymous with socio-economic class, defined as people having the same social, economic or educational status. For example, the working class and emerging professional class. However, academics distinguished social class and socio-economic status, with the former referring to one's relatively stable socio-cultural background and the latter referring to one's current social and economic situation, and consequently being more changeable over time. The precise measurements of what determines social class in society has varied over time. According to philosopher Karl Marx, class is determined entirely by one's relationship to the means of production, that is, their relations of production. The classes in modern capitalism, according to Marx, are the proletariat, those who work but do not own the means of production, and the bourgeoisie, those who invest and live off of the surplus generated by the former. This contrasts with the view of the sociologist Max Weber, who argued class is determined by economic position in contrast to social status or stand, which is determined by social prestige rather than simply just relations of production. The term class is etymologically derived from the Latin classes, which was used by census takers to categorize citizens by wealth in order to determine military service obligations. In the late 18th century, the term class began to replace classifications such as estates, rank and orders as the primary means of organizing society into hierarchical divisions. This corresponded to the general decrease in significance ascribed to hereditary characteristics and increase in the significance of wealth and income as indicators of position in the social hierarchy. Now, let us study about the class, status and categories of social class. Social class refers to a group of people with similar levels of wealth, influence and status. Sociologists typically use three methods to determine social class. Firstly, the objective method measures and analyzes hard facts. Secondly, the subjective method asks people what they think of themselves. Thirdly, the reputational method asks what people think of others. Results from these three research methods suggest that in the United States today, approximately 15 to 20% are in the poor, lower class, 30 to 40% are in the working class, 40 to 50% are in the middle class, and 1 to 3% are in the rich upper class. The lower class is typified by poverty, homelessness and unemployment. People of this class, few of whom have finished high school, suffer from lack of medical care, adequate housing and food, decent clothing, safety and vocational training. The media often stigmatize the lower class as the underclass, inaccurately characterizing poor people as welfare mothers who abuse the system by having more and more babies, welfare fathers who are able to work but do not, drug abusers, criminals and societal trash. Now, let's study about the upper class. Comprising only 1 to 3% of the United States population, the upper class holds more than 25% of the nation's wealth. This class divides into two groups, lower upper and upper upper. The lower upper class includes those with new money or money made from investments, business ventures and so forth. The upper class includes those aristocratic and high society families with old money who have been rich from generations. These extremely wealthy people live off the income from their inherited riches. The upper class is more prestigious than the lower upper class. Wherever their money comes from, both segments of the upper class are exceptionally rich. Both groups have more money than they could possibly spend, which leaves them with more leisure time for cultivating a variety of interests. They live in exclusive neighborhoods, gather at expensive social clubs, and send their children to the finest schools. As might be expected, they also exercise a great deal of influence and power both nationally and globally. Now, let us study about affluent consumer. Affluent households place more importance on friendship, leisure times and hobbies. They seem to place less importance on money, which is why they consume more domestic airline tickets, own more vehicles, hold more securities and spend more money on desktop, laptop and handheld computers as well as other electronic gadgets. Members of the affluent class have incomes that provide them with disproportionately larger share of all discretionary income. The extras allow the purchase of luxury cruises, foreign sports cars, tourism resorts and fine jewellery. There seems to be a relationship between health and economic status. Healthiest people are those who are economically advantaged. Higher income and more highly educated people are less likely to die of heart disease, strokes, hepatitis, TB, cancers and other diseases of the sort. Affluent class seems to live longer and in better health than middle class. Middle class lives longer and in better health than individuals at the bottom. Evidence suggests that children of the affluent may have problems with substance abuse, anxiety and depression. These may be caused by excessive pressure to achieve as well as due to physical and psychological isolation from parents. Now, let us study about middle class. The middle class is a class of people in the middle of a social hierarchy. According to Max Weber, in socio-economic terms, the middle class is a broad group of people in contemporary society who fall socio-economically between the working class and upper class. The common measures of what constitutes middle class vary significantly among cultures. The middle class are the sandwich class. These white collar workers have more money than those below them on the social ladder, but less than those above them. They divide into two levels according to wealth, education and prestige. The lower middle class is often made up of less educated people with lower incomes such as managers, small business owners, teachers and secretaries. The upper middle class is often made up of highly educated business and professional people with high incomes such as doctors, lawyers, stockbrokers and CEOs. The term middle class is first attested in James Bradshaw's 1745 pamphlet scheme to prevent running Irish wolves to France. Another phrase used in early modern Europe was the middling sort. The term middle class has had several sometimes contradictory meanings. It was once defined by exception as an intermediate social class between the nobility and the peasantry of Europe. While the nobility owned by the countryside and the peasantry worked the countryside, a new bourgeoisie, that is literally town dwellers, arose around mercantile functions in the city. In France, the middle classes helped drive the French Revolution. Another definition equated the middle class to the original meaning of capitalist, someone with so much capital that they could rival nobles. In fact, to be a capital-owning millionaire was the essential criterion of the middle class in the Industrial Revolution. Within capitalism, middle class initially referred to the bourgeois and the petite bourgeois. However, with the impoverization and proletarianization of much of the petite bourgeois world and the growth of finance capitalism, middle class came to refer to the combination of the labor aristocracy, the professionals and the white-collar workers. The size of the middle class depends on how it is defined, whether by education, wealth, environment of upbringing, social network, manners or values, etc. These are all related but are far from deterministically dependent. The factors that are often ascribed in modern usage to a middle class are: firstly, achievement of tertiary education; secondly, holding professional qualifications including academics, lawyers, chartered engineers, politicians and doctors, regardless of leisure or wealth; thirdly, belief in bourgeois values such as high rates of house ownership, delayed gratification and jobs which are perceived to be secure; fourthly, lifestyle in the United Kingdom, social status has historically been linked less directly to wealth than in the United States and has also been judged by signifiers such as accent, manners, place of education, occupation and the class of a person's family, circle of the friends and acquaintances. Fifthly, cultural identification. Often in the United States, the middle class are the most eager participants in the pop culture, whereas the reverse is true in Britain. The second generation of new immigrants will often enthusiastically forsake the traditional folk culture as a sign of having arrived in the middle class. In the United States, by the end of the 20th century, more people identified themselves as middle class than as lower or working class, that is, with insignificant numbers identifying themselves as upper class. The British Labour Party, which grew out of the organised labour movement and originally drew almost all of its support from the working class, reinvented itself under Tony Blair in the 1990s as New Labour, a party competing with the Conservative Party for the votes of the middle class as well as the working class. By 2011, almost 3/4 of the British people were also found to identify themselves as middle class. The working class are those minimally educated people who engage in manual labour with little or no prestige. Unskilled workers in the class, dishwashers, cashiers, maids and waitresses usually are underpaid and have no opportunity for career advancement. They are often called the working poor. Skilled workers in this class, carpenters, plumbers and electricians, are often called blue-collar workers. They may make more money than workers in the middle class. Secretaries, teachers, and computer technicians. However, their jobs are usually more physically taxing and in some cases quite dangerous. Although advertisers would prefer to show their products as part of an affluent lifestyle, blue collar or working class represents a vast group of consumers. Downscale consumers may actually be more brand loyal than wealthier customers because they cannot afford to make mistakes by switching into unfamiliar brands. A sensitive fact for marketers should be that non-affluent consumers often spend higher percentage of their available income on food than their middle class consumers. So friends, to summarize in today's session, we learnt about social class or simply class. As in class, society is a set of concepts in the social sciences and political theory centered on models of social stratification in which people are grouped into a set of hierarchical social categories, the most common being the upper, middle and lower classes. Sociologists typically use three methods to determine social class. Firstly, the objective method measures and analyzes hard facts. Secondly, the subjective method asks people what they think of themselves. Thirdly, the reputational method asks what people think of others. The middle class is a class of people in the middle of a social hierarchy. According to Weber, socio-economic terms, the middle class is the broad group of people in contemporary society who fall socio-economically between the working class and the upper class. Thank you.